Welcome to the Abundance Hack Show, Season 4, where we are focusing on mastery. The last 3 seasons, I gave you the information. Now, we're focusing on integrating it into our lives and embodying it. If you are ready to master your thoughts, emotions, and patterns to feel whole, fulfilled, and really grounded in who you are without dimming your shine so you can live the abundant life that you truly desire, then you are in the right place. Hey M&Ms, thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. What are you manifesting in your life today? Today's guest is Troy Hadeed, and I discovered him on Gaia TV. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but first I want to ask you, Troy, what does abundance mean to you?
Abundance. I think it's our abundance is a birthright, right? If we believe that, I'll try to speak a little slowly because of my accent, but yeah, if we believe that divinity and God lives in everything, and even within ourselves, then it's just for us to realize that abundance. But it is there for us. It is who we are. You know, we create through our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So once we realize that abundance, acknowledge it, it's there for us in whatever form we need.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So I discovered you on Gaia. And one of the main things, because you mentioned your accent, one of the main things that I loved is that you are in Trinidad because I love Trinidad. And I reached out to you immediately on Instagram and I'm like, I discovered you on Gaia and I love Trinidad. I was in Trinidad. What year was it? I'm not sure what year it was, but I had on a carnival costume and did this amazing photo shoot. So I just had to share that. So tell us about you. Tell us your story and how you got involved in yoga and all the work that you're doing right now.
Well, I was born in Trinidad, and I've lived here my whole life. I actually, like I mentioned to you before, I actually went to university in Tampa. So I'm quite familiar with Tampa, but I've traveled quite a bit, but I've lived here my whole life. My dad's family is of Syrian heritage, and my mom's family is of Irish heritage.
Oh, wow.
So they were also born here, but their parents were born elsewhere, right? And I've grown up here my whole life. As to how I found the yoga, I kind of say that yoga found me. And it's a really beautiful story. It could be long, but I'll try and make it quick. So when I graduated from University of Tampa in 2001, I came back to Trinidad and I opened a hemp store that I ran for about 7 years. But during and prior to that, somebody would always ask me, well, what are you going to do? And I would always say, well, I'm going to teach yoga. And they were like, well, do you practice yoga? And I'd be like, no. So I knew I was going to teach yoga even before I was practicing asana or postures, right? And when I reflect on why, I think from a really young age I always gravitated to Eastern traditions and philosophies and beyond organized religion. But I think if I had to put my finger on it, there was, when I was 14 years old, I used to, in what we would call secondary school, I used to go up every lunchtime. I would give up my lunchtime and I'd go and sit with a teacher called Mr. Gaia. And he would give me all these texts and scriptures to read. And that, I think, was the first time I ever influenced. I actually remember being influenced by yoga in that way, right? The first text he gave me was called the practice of brahmacharya, which is all about sexual conduct and misconduct. And funny enough, along the years, the last 15 years, when I travel and teach, people ask me this question, and I always say that, one day I wish I could meet Mr. Gaia to tell me how he may have impacted my life at such a young age. And just to bring this story to a close, funny enough, about 2 years ago, I got a random email from my website, a message from my website that usually goes to junk. and it arrived in my inbox, and it said, I think I gave you practice of Brahmacharya to read in 1994 in Fatima College, S. Gaia Dean. And I rocked back. I was like, what? How is this even possible? Like, it's been over 20 years. So I immediately replied, and he sent me his phone number, and I called him. And that's when I got a real story as to how it all went down. He said, Troy, you were actually sent to detention. He said, you came to detention, and I gave you this text to read as a joke. Like, who gives a 14-year-old a text on sexual conduct to read? And he said, I sit there and I devoured it. And he said, from then on, I came up every lunchtime at my own free will to read these texts. And he said, I wish I could read you his email to me, but he pretty much said, Troy, for the last 25 years, I've been talking about you as a 14-year-old kid. And I was like, well, last 25 years, I've been talking about you as a person who introduced me to yoga. And he said, you know, life has so much synchronicity because we've been talking about one another, but we've never been in touch since 1994. And it's just such a powerful story and message. So that's how yoga found me.
I love that story. Yeah. That is amazing. Yeah. So one of the things that you focused on in your Gaia series is being present. Yeah. And I think in the world we live in today, I don't know how it is in Trinidad, but here in the US, like people are attached to their phones, they're attached to social media, they're going, and we're not really present. So I really want you to speak to that, because I think that we're craving that connection that presence brings, but we're inundated with information. So we're not actually being present. So I'd love for you to speak on that.
Yeah, sure. And feel free to jump in and stop me, because once I get going, I could like keep going. But you know, it's funny, Niajae, because I just finished teaching a class, and I spoke about that very thing. So this synchronicity is not in any way ironic. But you know, we talk about what it is to be present. And in what I refer to as New Age spirituality, which is a New Age culture of what's cool and what's not cool. And it's great that this has become cool, right? This path of spiritual realization has almost become cool, or has become cool in some aspects. But what it means to be present on the surface, we can say, yeah, don't live in regret of the past, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, or live in anxiety of the future. That's one aspect to living on in the present moment. But that's on the very surface. That's just barely scratching the surface, right? So I'll say, first of all, what it means to be present is that to actually be with someone, because, you know, there's nothing that exists beyond the present moment. And to me, this is the foundation of the practice of yoga, right? The second Yoga Sutra said, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the quieting of the fluctuations of the mind. And as long as the mind is fluctuating, we can't be present. We're always worried about what comes next, or comparing something to the past, right? It is the fluctuation of my mind, Niajae, that makes me separate from you. It makes us different. It's the fluctuations of the mind that start to analyze our opinions and our skin color and where we are, and begins to separate us. But if we learn to live in the present moment, nothing exists but God. In that moment, me and you are the very same. We're not separate. We are in this experience together. And that goes for everything, right? I know not all your viewers might connect to the practice of yoga, so I like to try and talk to these things loosely, right? Because yoga is beyond what we think yoga looks like. But at the foundation of yoga is realization and union or yoking of yourself with God, of light and dark, of me and you. And there's a teacher called Osho that you may have heard of, and he used to say that yoga is BS. He said, because you can't yoke, you can't join what was never separate.
That's
So,
powerful.
so I love that perspective of it, because we understand that this is not a joining of me and you. This is not a joining of light and dark. This is not a joining of ourselves with God. This is a realization to what is.
I just
And
got chills.
yeah, and the only way we can ever begin to acknowledge that is by being present in the moment. And the practices like yoga, which help us deeper relationship to breath and our mind, begins to quiet the mind as we develop a relationship to breath. Because only when we do that can we live and embody present moment, right? So like these postures and stuff we do on our mat or on your singing bowl or on your meditation cushion, that's not a real practice. That's just a training ground. That's where we prepare ourselves for the actual practice, which is the living embodiment of love. That is the practice we've come here to realize. And that happens when we begin to dissolve this otherness and this separation, when we stop thinking about what someone has done or said to us. Because if we dissolve the me and the you, no one can do something to me. There's no identity. It's just we're in this experience together to try to grow and learn and realize what it means to live from a place of love, right? So identity begins to dissolve when we learn to live in the present moment. But the very foundation of that is a relationship to our breath and a relationship to our mind. And you know, in present moment, I could go on and on about it. But another thing, like what I spoke about in class this morning, is that past, present, and future are actually not separate. They're all part of the same thing. So a lot of the time, what I see is someone saying, be present. And they try to forget the past. They try to push the past away and pretend it never existed, whether that past carries trauma or hurt or pain. But think of it this way. If we deny past, then those experiences have power over us. So the past, while we want to live in the present moment, the past actually influences how we show up in the present moment. It influences our ability to love one another and to love others and to forgive and to trust. So if I carry pain from my past, trauma from my past, that inhibits my ability to love and trust someone else, I can't just forget that. If I forget that and push it aside, I become a puppet, because that begins to control me and the way I show up in the present moment, right? Whereas, if I create a relationship to my past, if I can acknowledge that hurt, acknowledge that pain, if I can work towards healing that, I can now use that relationship to love more, to trust more. So I use my past as a tool to grow so that I can be present in a way that I have never been before. But if we deny our past and turn our head and pretend it never existed, then it will control us. Because we can't, you know, we always talk about darkness. And there's light in darkness. We have to move through it to discover light that is in that darkness. But I also want to acknowledge that there's a time and a place when we're ready to do that. Sometimes we need to put our past and our pain aside for a moment until we align ourselves and become ready to face it and to look at it I acknowledge that. And that's an amazing place to be. But I always encourage people, don't forget it. Don't just move on from it and pretend it doesn't exist. Because unless we heal it, it has power over us.
Oh my goodness. So much wisdom and power dropped right there. I absolutely love it. And the puppet analogy, just I feel like mic drop, like M&M's, go back and listen to that again because that was so powerful. And I totally agree. So I what I consider myself like more of the like new age spirituality. And I did a video yesterday where I talked about how challenging I have a meditation studio. So people come to me all the time and they're like, I can't meditate. So what's a practical way people can start to be like connect to their breath? I mean, obviously I work on that, like if someone comes into my studio, but if they're just listening, like how can someone start to connect to their breath? And I'll share what I shared in the video yesterday. I think if you just tell someone today, like let's just say an average entrepreneur, to quiet their mind or be present, it's almost setting them up for failure if they don't understand the practical steps to do that. So what I say is first observe what's going on in your mind. So if you're feeling something from your past, if you're worried about the future, observe what's going on in your mind. The second step is to decide if it's serving you or not. Is this in alignment? Is this aligned with your values, your goals, your desires? Or is this something hindering it? So do you want to hold on to this or do you want to release it? And then the third step is to try to quiet your mind and just be still. So that's kind of my new agey way of like explaining to people, don't just try to like shut it off because that can cause trapped emotions. And I'm a huge advocate for not storing emotion in your body. So I would love to hear your take on that and like practical ways people can start to implement just being present.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll offer maybe two little insights and analogies and a little story that might help. And you hit it on a point there, Niajae, is that people want to meditate. People know the power of it. If you pay any attention at all, you understand the power of your mind. But people are scared. They're scared what's in there, right? And a lot of people, when they sit to meditate, they get frustrated because they feel they're not doing it right. And they can't quiet their mind, right? The mind keeps running a racket. And I explain that relationship in this way. It's like an eternal marriage. Except that there's no divorce and there's no separation. It's you and your mind forever. You can't go out and get a new one, right? So naturally, you want to make friends with your mind, or else the rest of your life is going to be painful. It's going to be torture. You're going to live in anxiety for the rest of your life. And imagine that you were in this eternal marriage. You had a partner. This was your lover. This was your person, right? Would you ever come home from a day's work and tell your partner to shut up? No. If you want to deepen a relationship to your mind, there's intimacy that has to happen, which means you have to listen. Your mind has something to say, right? And, you know, I just finished writing a book, and I say that even if you're Buddha, and you haven't listened to your mind for 10 years, and you finally sit to listen, your mind's going to have a lot to say to you, right? Think of it as a partner in a relationship. If you ignore your spouse or your lover for a week and finally sit down, you're going to get an earful, right? So to me, the first part of creating this relationship with your mind is just to listen. Just to sit and look. Like you said, just observe what comes up. Sure, push it away. Don't shut it up. And I feel that the more you sit and listen to your mind, it's the less it has to say. because it's already said what it needs to say. But it wants to be heard a lot of the time. So you'll find that there's certain things that keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And that's things that you need to acknowledge and try to understand. That's like your partner saying, I feel this way, I feel sad. And now you have to say, all right, well, why? You have to begin to probe us to try to understand why this keeps coming up all the time, why this keeps coming up all the time, right? I remember I once did many years ago, I did my first Vipassana retreat, which is 10 days of silence. And the first 5 days of that was absolute torture. Absolute torture. All I could think about was my business going to crap, my girlfriend cheating on me, my friends having a good time, and I'm just sitting here on a meditation cushion like, what am I doing with my life? Everything. It was absolute torture. And there was a guide, right? And about halfway through, I want to say it was day 5, he said something that switched my perspective. Because I can't remember what he said, but I can remember what it did for me. And it allowed me to realize that all these thoughts that were plaguing my mind were all based on fear. They all came from a place of fear. Fear of losing out, fear of missing out, whatever it was, whatever fear it was, all of them came from a place of fear, and they were just bombarding me constantly, constantly, constantly. So naturally, that got lodged in my body. I couldn't be at ease. I couldn't be relaxed. I couldn't be present. But the second I realized where all those thoughts were coming from, I knew in myself I didn't want to be governed by fear. I wanted to live from a place of love. But the second I recognized where all those thoughts were coming from, I was able to choose differently. So it's like my mind just wanted to be heard. Those fears just wanted to be acknowledged. And as long as I heard them and understood them, I wouldn't tell you that they never came back. But they didn't have power over me this time. They weren't screaming and shouting. It was more like your partner holding your hand and saying, yeah, I'm still scared. It wasn't your partner holding you and shaking you and being like, I'm scared, you know? So I just invite someone to recognize that meditation is simply creating a relationship with your mind. It's just sitting and looking and listening. You're not trying to shut your mind up. When you develop that relationship, your mind will quiet itself from time to time, and you will both be in that intimate relationship. But don't force it. And with that said, I will say one more thing, that the language of your mind is the breath. The only thing that can tame your mind is your breath. And you know, there's a yoga teacher, B.K. Iyengar, he says, your mind is king of everything. And I love to use the example that you might look at this wall behind me and say it's white. But if I choose to believe it's blue, it's blue. It's blue until I choose to believe it's white. So that's how powerful your mind is, and that works in so many different ways. Your mind creates your reality. So B.K. Iyengar used to say, your mind is king of everything, but breath is king of your mind. And in order to create this relationship with our mind, we have to understand our breath, understand how our breath works, and deepen our relationship to breath. You know, and the two are so very, they work together. They're like our mind, our breath, and ourselves are so intimately interwoven. And our body, of course, in ways that we will never understand.
So powerful. So powerful. Thank you for that. And I love the analogy. It's perfect. Like that eternal relationship. And yeah, oh my God, so good. Okay, so if someone's like, okay, I've never done any breath work. I've never taken a yoga class. Do you have a simple takeaway as far as starting to connect to their breath?
Yeah. Well, so it's important to understand. I tell people all the time, I learned to breathe at 27 years old. And this was 3 years after teaching yoga, or 2 years after teaching yoga. So it's not even something I was really taught in my first teacher training. But it's essential to understand how a breath works. And for me, when you understand the anatomy of a breath and how it works, it blows your mind. It blew me wide open. So I'm going to tell you. But it also makes you wonder, well, why is this not taught in schools? Why is this not taught to athletes? Why is this not taught to us from a really young age? And what I'm going to share with you now is not, and I want to make it clear, it's not some new age theory. It's not yoga breathing. It's not blah, blah, blah. This is the anatomy of breath. This is medicine and science. Any doctor will agree with what I'm about to tell you. But it really makes us wonder why we're not taught this stuff. Anyway, carrying on. So it's important to understand that when we inhale, so I'll ask you, Niajae, when you inhale, do you imagine that being a pull of air or a push of air into your body?
Oh, actually, a pull. I'm
A
pulling
pull.
air.
Yeah. So that's what I would have said at 27. And that's what most people looking at this will probably say. We pull it into our body. That's not actually how our breath works at all. How our breath works, it's a vacuum. So if you take a box, think of my thoracic cavity, I'll tilt this down a little bit. From my diaphragm to my sternum and my rib cage, think of it as a box. And a lot of the time we think that we breathe into your belly, because we've been told that, breathe into your belly, which is great. It's your diaphragm descends into your belly, which causes your abdomen to expand. But you can't actually breathe into your belly, into your stomach. That doesn't happen, right? So think of a box, and inside this box has a set air pressure, right? Has a set volume, and inside that box is an air pressure, set air pressure. If you expand the volume of that box, you make a box bigger, what happens to the air pressure? It will go down, right? It's a law of physics. So in Trinidad, which is a real party culture, I explain it like this. If we are in a 10 by 10 room, and we have 100 people in that room, you're like this, you can barely move, right? But if you expand the volume of that room and make it like 30 feet by 30 feet, now you have more room. So there's less pressure. So one of the laws of physics is that volume and air pressure are inversely related. If the volume expands, the air pressure decreases. If the volume gets smaller, the air pressure increases. Make sense? Right? So get this. This is a box. And inside this box is a set air pressure. When you inhale, you expand the volume of the box, which means your diaphragm descends into your belly, which makes your belly expand. Your chest expands and lifts, but there's so much more that happens. Your rib cage expands like gills of a fish. Your back of your body expands like wings of an angel. You create space in your thoracic cavity in every possible dimension, not just up and down, right? The more space you can create in your body is the lower the air pressure gets. Now what this means is that the air pressure outside of you becomes higher than the air pressure inside of you. Another law of physics says that air pressure moves from high pressure to low pressure, or gas moves from high pressure to low pressure. So when you, I'm trying to connect some dots here for you. When you expand and the air pressure inside of you decreases, the air outside of you moves inside of you to create balance. We don't actually pull air into our body. We create space to receive breath. We don't breathe. We are breathed by something externally. And that thing, that power breathing me, is the same power breathing you. Same thing breathing me, it's the same breath breathing you. So it's important to understand that we don't pull air into our body. We create space to receive breath. And the more space we can create, is the more we can receive. And there are two things I want to connect for you here, right? One is that you create space, like I said, left to right, up and down, front and back. But if the muscles of your body are tight, if the muscles alongside your body are tight, if your hamstrings are tight, if your leg muscles are tight, that's like, Niajae, that's like me pulling your rib cage down and telling you, expand and breathe. You can't do it, right? And that's one of the amazing things about this relationship between breath, body, and mind. They're so interconnected because, like you said, you talked about emotion, right? If you get stressed or emotional and that stores in your body does this, right? So then you can't breathe properly. Then if you start to breathe properly, your body relaxes. And when your body relaxes, your mind gets quieter, right? So the relationship between the body, mind, and the breath, they are not indirectly related. They are directly related. So it's like a catch-22 because you want to breathe properly so you can quiet your mind and relax the muscles of your body. But communication also goes the opposite way. Because if you're stressed and your body gets tight, you can't breathe properly, right? So everything needs to be in absolute balance. So the first thing to answer your question is people have to understand how breath works. And much like you're in a relationship with your mind, you're also in a relationship with your breath. So you don't want to force your breath into you. You're not going to force your partner to do something you don't want to do. You have to create space to receive them, right? And one of the other things I really connect to that kind of changed the game for me is when I understood how breath worked and I understood that we create space to receive our breath. And in my yoga practice, for those of you that have practiced with me, you know, I lead and guide a class with a very long, smooth breath and very intimate, slow movement, right? When I understood the power of extending the breath and moving like that, the practice for me became somewhat of a prayer. I began to feel my understanding of God and feel that my practice was prayerful. And then something brought me to Google the word, I talk about this a lot, Google the word spirit, like Holy Spirit or Divine Spirit, whatever you want to call spirit. And I came to realize that the word spirit actually comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means to breathe. So for me, it's like God is moving inside of us with every breath. Spirit is trying to make love to us with every breath, right? And I know New Age spirituality and stuff. We love to talk about manifestation, right? So, and that's beautiful, right? It's an old age concept from hundreds and thousands of years ago. It's not actually new. But I like to look at it this way. Manifestation is prayer, right? That's what it is. God lives inside of us with every breath. So it's not so much that we are manifesting, but we are praying. Everything we do, say, and think is a living embodiment of prayer. The problem is that most of the time we are praying unconsciously. To tie it back, because we are not present to what we are doing, to what we are saying, and what we are thinking. We are living our lives on automatic, right? So we are praying for things and we are manifesting things unconsciously. Because to bring awareness to something and say, I'm going to manifest an iPhone. Great, iPhone is here. Sure, that's one part of it. That's a very small part of it. But what about all the other times when you're manifesting things and you don't realize what you're manifesting? You don't realize what you're praying for. For me, when we connect to divinity or God or spirit being breath inside of us, and we understand that we are living embodiments of prayer, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And that's powerful. And it's not an easy responsibility to accept because it comes with accountability, right? Am I going off topic here?
No, I love it. I'm following.
Yeah. So I remember for me, and you know, I want to make clear that while I talk about these things all the time, it's not something I have figured out, right? It's like I acknowledge that what I do, say, and think is prayer. I acknowledge that I pray and manifest things every day. Am I always present and conscious of what I'm manifesting and praying for? No. You know, because that's part of the human experience, is every day we have to try to do better and see better and acknowledge, be accountable for where we can do better, right? I always hear people say that, you know, I can't do yoga, practice meditation because I drink or I smoke or I eat meat or I do drugs or all this kind of stuff. And it's so important to realize that, like, you don't go to a doctor because you're well, right? This is a practice. And I always say that a yoga practitioner or someone committed to the path of yoga or spiritual realization is not someone that has it figured out. It's someone that is committed to seeing their shit. Can I say that? Sorry. It's someone that's committed to seeing their mistakes and where they can do better. That's what it means to be committed to the path of a spiritual path of realization or path of yoga, right? It's about acknowledging where we can do better and actually trying to do better. Maybe we make the same mistake over and over and over again. But no matter what, each time we try to do better until we finally get it, until it finally lands for us, you know?
Oh my goodness. So I feel like there's so much gold, and I try to I'm like writing down like, ooh, I love this. And then you drop another like golden nugget. Yeah. So I really love when you said the more we create space, the more we receive. And so you're saying it in reference to breath, but I think it's really powerful in life, period. We have to create this space to receive the abundance and the joy and the love that we desire. So I think that's such a powerful thing to really just like let sit in. But you've dropped so much gold and so much wisdom. I love it all. I'm going to create a lot of snippets out of this because there's so much power in everything that you said. And I want people to really, really pay attention to how much wisdom really that you just said and adapting it. So this is my 4th season of this podcast. And I feel like the first season or 2 was kind of giving the information. And the 3rd season is like, okay, let's really like let's really integrate it into our lives. And like this one is about embodying it. So how can we embody these lessons? How can we embody, like how can we live our yoga, not just show up on the mat and look cute? Because if you go to TikTok and you type in yoga, it's a bunch of girls in like cute outfits, and it's become more about the leggings and, you know, like what you're wearing and the cute poses and how flexible is she. And it's not, people are not actually living and embodying what it stands for. So that's what I'm really trying to encourage people to do, like actually embody and master these techniques. And when I say master, like no one's perfect. I'm still figuring it out. We're all still figuring it out. And that's why we're in this time, space, and reality to continue to learn, to make the mistakes and grow and choose to show up better next time. So I love everything you've said.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing till you see that, Niajae. Yeah, it's um, it's so important. But you know, when I started teaching yoga, um, I think I was a little militant in my approach and wanting everyone to get it. But I didn't get it yet. And I think it's important for us to understand that everyone's where they're at. Everyone's where they're at. It doesn't mean we don't encourage them or guide them in certain directions. We have to, right? If someone's out of alignment, we have to speak it and guide them and be compassionate in our communication. But it's also important to understand that everyone's where they're at. But for me, just to add to that, I think, like we just said, I really do believe breath is intelligent. It is conscious. It is divinely intelligent and conscious. And if we help someone create space in their body, and that's what yoga postures do, right? It not just, it builds strength, but it also helps us create space and breathe into postures, right? Which is why, for me, it's so important that a yoga practice is not aerobic. That's not what yoga should look like. Yoga should look more like Tai Chi or Qigong, right? But once we dial someone into that and prepare their body to receive breath and give them the tools to breathe properly, that intelligence will come. That consciousness, that intelligence will absolutely come. To me, there's nothing more powerful than having someone create space and time and teach them how to breathe properly.
I love it. I can listen to you talk all day, but I know we have to wrap it up soon. So what is your top tip for living an abundant life?
You know, for me, we talk about a lot of things with regards to abundance, and we talk about manifesting all these things, and most of the time it's material things that we want to manifest, whether it be a job or success or whatever. So I'll leave with two things, and this might be out of the box understanding of abundance, but you know, we often say live every day like it's your last day to live. And if you had 24 hours to live, how would you spend your time, right? To really sit and look at that. Some of us might, and for everyone this is different, so I'm not saying this with judgment, right? For some of us, we might go and travel the world, we might go to our favorite restaurants, we might go and lie on the beach, we might do whatever, go and watch our favorite movie, eat our favorite meal, you name it. Go and drink ourselves to oblivion, who knows, right? Everyone, that's a little bit different. And at the foundation of the practice of yoga, you know, they have this word we throw around called namaste, 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 right? And it's almost become like a cliche. But it's important for us to understand what that means. And at the foundation of that practice, of that word, is that I acknowledge God in you. That I see God in you. That I acknowledge God in myself, and I can see God in you no matter what. No matter what you've done or what you've said or how much pain you've caused, I can see God in you. And I can see what you carry, right? So to combine those two things, for me, if I if I know I have 24 hours again to live, and I know that my actions, words, and thoughts contribute to our world in a very real, tangible way, I want to do what I can to heal my relationships. Because our interaction with people carries a vibration, it carries a resonance, our word, our thoughts, our actions. And sometimes we carry hurt and pain and resentment from our past. Funny how we've come circle, right? Right back to the present moment and the past. And while it takes time to heal those relationships, if I knew I had to leave my body and I had 24 hours left, I want to meet those people and those relationships. And I want to at least say, listen, I love you, I forgive you, I'm sorry, I am grateful. And to me, as long as we can live every day or try to live every day in that way, as if we are seeing God, as if we are, every interaction, no matter what, is one we are having with our divine understanding, our divine being. If we can try to embody that more and more, then you don't even need to think about creating abundance, because we become abundance. We realize that we are abundance. And we can see that in everyone, right? Because what is more abundant than God? And I say, I speak to God, I should have said it in the beginning, but I speak to God as in one of my teachers, Sean Corn, says, your understanding of God. And that's what I speak of when I say God. It's not a religious context, it's not a God in a box. It's an intelligence, understanding. It's someone's personal understanding of God. But what could be more abundant than that? You know?
I feel like, do you have a podcast? I feel like you need a podcast. Like, so much wisdom.
Niajae, it's been suggested many times.
Yeah. All right. So something you said in the tip that you shared for living an abundant life reminds me of Ho'oponopono. Like, I love you, forgive me. Are you, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Is that where you're basing that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that is such an amazing, powerful practice. I mean, I can't say where it originated or where that, but to me that is the essence of compassion, love, and understanding. So I absolutely say, yeah, if I had one more day to live, I want to mend all the relationships that might carry with it any kind of negativity or anything that makes us separate or other. Because if I had one more day to live and I have to leave my body, I want to know that I've done whatever I can to leave a vibration and a resonance that fills the world with love and makes it a better place, you know. And to me, that's what it means for me to live every day as if it were our last, you know. So I just would say to invite people to step into that reflection and see what that means for them, you know.
So beautiful. I love it. So where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me at troyhadeed.com. And if they sign in for newsletter, they'll get a little snippet of a book reading of the first chapter of my book, which is not signed yet. There's no publisher or agent yet, but if anyone's listening and wants to jump on it. But I'm also at Instagram at Troy Hadeed. And we have our own online platform where I teach live classes from probably about 6 classes a week. And then we have other teachers as well. And there's a content library, and that's beyondyogatv.com. But yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, troyhadeed.com. So they could find me anywhere they like and reach out with any questions. And if I don't reply, just nag me, because sometimes I just forget.
And then also Gaia, your series on Gaia. So I feel like a lot of people are getting into Gaia and discovering it. So definitely check out his series on there.
Yeah, I forget about Gaia, but Gaia is so important to me, and they've done so much and I would love to bring more content to them, and hope that one day I will bring a lot more content to Gaia as well. But those classes and series on Gaia are also amazing.
Yeah.
For
I'm
someone
working
who's on Gaia, yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on a documentary on sound therapy. So I'm just putting it out in the universe that it'll be on Gaia soon.
Yeah. Who knows? One day it will. Very well could be. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. So much wisdom shared in this episode. I encourage the M&Ms to go back and listen to this a second time because there is so much power and little tips that you can start to integrate into your life and just being more present, being more mindful. So thank you for the work that you're doing and coming on the show.
Yeah, likewise, Niajae. And anytime you want to chat more, I'm always here.
Yeah, and I'm coming to Trinidad too. I need some doubles in my life.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. And thank you for having me. It really is an honor.
Thank you. All right,
All
M&Ms,
right,
until next time, be decadent.
love.
Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.